and being able to sort of track and trace the contacts who have come in contact with the COVID positive cases. But those deployments were sort of confined into the large workspace areas, not at the city level, really. And we have a couple of large pharma organizations of repute, multinational, who are actually on our side, using some of those solutions as well. So from there onwards, we've been, progressing and sort of looking at, bringing in a lot of other adjacent solutions and requirements which are around man, machine, and material, if you will. So, on the man side or on the people side, we already have worker safety. On the machine side, to be able to sort of, get the various parameters of machine and to be able to do predictive maintenance and health monitoring and those kind of things. And on the material side, asset tracking in a very sort of in a very sweetly specified or defined use case way, and I'll touch upon on that sometime during during the discussion. So that was a sort of small story on our IoT journey so far of Tata Communications. And on Tata Communications side, we have actually two offerings. One is the end-to-end solutions offering that we have on some of the use cases that I touched upon, for which we have gone very deep and wide in India with several customers on board. And then we also have Move, which is more of a global sort of mobility platform for very large sort of track and trace cases and many more for customers who are looking at a global sort of mobility really. With that, what I'll do is I'll actually move over to our first panelist, and I'll actually go to Siva. Siva, if you can quickly touch upon on a quick introduction with on HCL and what trends you actually see across globe, challenges and opportunities as you see in the manufacturing ecosystem, and how do you think organizations should actually approach or are approaching towards the IoT-led transformation? Over to you, Siva.
Yeah, thanks, Lalit. That's a beautiful introduction about Tata Communication. I'm sure you are pioneers in some of these connectivity technologies, that the way you shaped the Indian market with LoRaWAN and LPWAN technologies. Thanks for the great insights on how you were driving this ecosystem, being at the front. So good morning to all of you, and I'm glad to be part of this esteemed panel. Each of them have done some of the brilliant IoT implementations across their organizations. My name is Shiva Kottavalli. I head the IoT-led business transformation at HCL Technologies. I don't need to introduce HCL. It's been a market leader in the engineering and R&D services for the past 4 decades. We have been working with almost 8 out of 10 global manufacturing giants in the across the globe in driving some of their digital transformation initiatives. And IoT Works is specifically focused at driving the new age digital transformation across these industries which have huge asset value chains deployed, and maximizing the effectiveness of those asset value chains, and then bringing returns to the enterprise, maximizing those returns to the enterprise on these asset value chains with a experience-centric, outcome-oriented business is what we drive across the globe. And specific to IoT Works and IoT business, we have been pioneers, and we lead the thought leadership across the IoT implementations across different verticals with some of the first kind of solutions that we brought to market, addressing some of the business challenges of these organizations that we work with. And we bring all the learning from this ecosystem to our Indian manufacturing environment through the NASSCOM Center of Excellence for IoT. We have been founding member, and I have been on the governing council in exchanging the cross-pollination of the ideas that can be taken to the Indian market, and then make the Indian manufacturing enterprises get benefit out of the global best practices in implementing IoT-led business transformation. So having said that, if we look at the past decade or so, how the technology world has been changing, I think we have seen the one of the fastest growing disruption, which already has been running at a breakneck speed across the industries and reshaping the industries. And it may be a cliche to say that there is no other alternative than adapting to the changing landscape that's been kind of disrupted by the new age IoT and digital technologies. As per the analysts, the 4 out of the top 10 leaders of today will become fade, will go out of business if they don't really adapt to the changing digital disruption or born digital enterprises which are challenging them in this environment. And this is the kind of a inflection point that we are at, where all these technologies that we have been talking for over a decade or so, now they are maturing and they're at a level of actually generating the business value that's been envisioned by them. So if you look at the sensors, the affordability of the sensor, the functionality of the sensor that they kind of give insights is kind of reached a very mature level. Connectivity, Lalit already spoke about ubiquitous, diverse options of connectivity technologies, and the affordability of those technologies is there. Scalable cloud technologies have made it one of the new dimension to the business challenges, the way that we look at the analytics, the kind of latest technology innovation that analytics is bringing with the diverse options of creating business insights. And the users are also always connected and be on the real time, and the ecosystem of security, probably when some of our panelists will cover that, is also evolved to an extent where all these dimensions are making the digital disruption reality for the organization. Specific to the manufacturing organizations, that if we see, if we analyze the two dimensions of the efficiency drive levers and the growth levers of these manufacturing organizations, as you know, 8% out of the operations cost is uh, due to the unplanned downtime that organizations see. And we have now some of the use cases that Lalit was mentioning about the predictive maintenance of the equipment, availability of equipment, remote monitoring of the equipment is almost real these days. And if 1% of improvement is achieved by the efficiency through efficiency improvement in the organization, that adds up to about $270 billion in 10 years, in the next decade or so, to the global GDP. And that improvement is possible through some of these remote monitoring or monitoring of the real-time monitoring of the assets and their availability or the overall equipment efficiency that the organizations are talking about. So these are all already being practiced or already being implemented by the most of the organizations across the globe, and some of those best practices is something that is easily realizable for our ecosystem as well. And on the growth levers or growth driver side, if you look at the increasing customer expectations are changing the product landscape that most of the organizations are building. The product landscapes are the products are no longer just products. The product based business now are already moved into a consumption based business. The customer experience is what is driving the product design than a product per se. A car is not no longer just a car. It's the driving as an experience is what the design of the manufacturer thinks about. Or a mobile phone is not just a mobile phone. The user experience that it gives is something which drives the design of these products. So the connected products and the customer expectations, user expectations on that has already taken the debate beyond the traditional thinking of the products. Customer expectations on being connected all the time. Real time is also late. The real time is too late, and we are talking about ultra low latency in the 5G technologies that we will come about. So if we step back and look at what is this landscape that is shaping the manufacturing industry, I think the outcome based business models, the customer experience, the adapting to the new technologies and creating intelligent devices which go beyond just being products and then providing services to the customers. And beyond that, the customers is that is the ecosystem is something on the growth drivers of the organization that we are witnessing. So it's the smart manufacturing, smart supply chain, visibility of the entire landscape, integrated landscape of the organization is digital thread across the organization. The Industry 4.0 models is something which is what is shaping the market as we are looking at. So if I have to summarize four mega trends across the organization, I think equipment as a service, servitization, B2B, and beyond that, B2B2X is the kind of direction it is taking. And to look at the future organizations, it is just autonomous operations and predictive plans or autonomous plans is the direction. As one of the great researcher pointed out, the future organizations or future factories will be just with two entities, one a man and a dog. The man to feed the dog and the dog to make sure that the man is not touching the equipment in the plant. So autonomous plants is what the future. And if I had to comment on how organizations are adapting to this new changes is, I think by this decade, I mean 2020 itself, we are at the inflection point where many of the organizations are already uh, connected plants and connected products is the new norm. The connected things or controlled experimentation of IoT has evolved into a stage of connected processes. The functionalization of IoTization has already happened. But the next 5 years, we see that that will scale into a scaled transformation where the entire connected business ecosystem will become a reality, is what we see as a market prediction. And COVID, the new normal, has actually become a catalyst for it. I think I think McKinsey or someone recently predicted or analyzed that the disruption or the COVID new normal has already fast-paced the new technologies by at least 3 years. Adoption of new technologies has become 3 years for the organizations. And the shift is more relevant to the manufacturing organizations with declining revenues. So there's no option than quickly adapt to the new technologies is what is already happening. And we at HCL, we see technology, business transformation or digital transformation is not about implementing new technology. It is only one part of the three dimensions that we talk about. Technology transformation should actually enable the operational transformation, and that should lead to the business transformation. And the business transformation should be the goal of manufacturing organizations. And the new normal has created such a resilience for remote, connected, and smart ecosystem, be it the workforce, be it the operations, or be it the business, is going to be driven by these remote, connected, and smart technologies, which is what all IoT facilitates. So, with that, I would like to hand it over to Lalit. And Lalit, if you have any future questions or comments, I can chip in.
No, that was wonderful. I mean, I just so loved listening to all your thoughts and great analogies, Siva. And it's so good to know that leaders like you actually have a very sort of clear vision on going forward. It's not technology; it's the outcome, really, right? What customers are after. So with that, I will move to our next panelist, Dr. A. Pavindan. Dr. Saab, the Center of Excellence for IoT, which is an initiative by NESCOM, ARNET, and METWI, was announced in July 2015 by our Prime Minister to help the IoT startup ecosystem in our country. I think it's been 5 years now. Would you like to talk about the progress so far, and highlight the achievements of the center? And also, if you could talk about, with increased IoT adoption in various verticals, what are some of the security and interoperability challenges? And what are the new approaches to sort of address them?
Yeah, thank you, Lalit. Thank you very much for the opportunity to CII. So you are able to see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, okay. So the Center of Excellence initiative was announced way back in 2015 timeframe. AirNet was a government partner in this initiative. The first center was set up inaugurated in 2016 timeframe in Bangalore. It is operationalized by NESCOM with the funding from Government of India and industry leaders. I think some of the panelists are already supportive to NESCOM or industry partner in this initiative, like Tata Communication, HCL, and Texas Instruments, Qualcomm. There are many leaders, Cisco. All of them are supporting this initiative.
Dr.
And,
Pavan, I just wanted to intervene. Are you showing some slides? Because it's the desktop that we see on the screen right now.
oh, sorry. Yeah, maybe yes. Let me just.
And desktop has a beautiful scenery, so.
Okay, sorry.
That's right.
Okay. Sorry. Maybe is it coming now better? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just going to come up. Yeah, we can see we can see it now.
Sorry. Is it right now? Yeah, I think I am showing the right screen now. Yes.
Yes.
So then later, the center was set up in other locations like Gurgaon in 2018. It was inaugurated with government of Haryana's participation, and later with government of Gujarat participation. In 2019, it was inaugurated in Gandhinagar. So the other center is also proposed in Vizag, which is yet to come. So the NASCOM is a major entity. ERNET is only a government academic partner in this initiative. So yeah. So in terms of the Center of Excellence value stack as presented by NASCOM, so we can see that it is essentially to help the startup ecosystem to bring their ideas into products. So by utilizing the Center of Excellence space, focusing on different verticals from healthcare, manufacturing to agriculture, energy, and the different verticals focused startups are being housed in the Center of Excellence in Bangalore. So they also run various technology workshops and proof of concepts factories, because there is a good connect with the industry. Having run by NASCOM, there is a good participation from the industry. So definitely the startup ecosystems take advantage of this connect. In terms of the activities, so incubation, acceleration, and they have mentorship from both academia and industry. So and there is a investor connect also in the engagement for the startup. So if you look at the key performance indicators, so the number of startups incubated so far as of 1st November is about 91. So in terms of the connected pan-India opportunities, these are all numbers which are close to what is originally planned 5 years back. So I think another 1 year time frame is there for the Center of Excellence to achieve the targets. But these are very close to the numbers that was originally planned from what I see from the original proposal, because it was submitted to the ministry. So these are all the numbers that you can see in terms of the number of prototypes created and the patents registered and the societal projects executed and so forth. So I think since the COE is a major initiative, so I'll brief. And in terms of the interoperability and the security questions, before that, I thought I'll just highlight in terms of the some of the R&D projects that ERNET has done. The other interoperability related questions, probably we can take it up during the panel discussion if the chair is okay with that. So I'll just have a few more slides on some of the activities that we have done in the IoT domain. So the LoRaWAN, which I think the panel chair also highlighted, the Tata Communication, the large network on LoRa. That's good to hear some of the use cases that you are highlighting. So ERNET also has done LoRa street lighting prototyping use case jointly with IISc, where we have evaluated this in a campus environment in terms of reachability and also the performance measures, and then optimal deployment of LoRaWAN gateways in the typical city environment was also evaluated in this study. And field experiments were also done in this case. So other than that, we have initiated a project way back in 2010 timeframe to utilize the IPv6 for low power wireless personal area network 6 low pan for open interoperable management and monitoring stack, IoT stack. So using that, we have done different prototyping use cases. Majority of them are academic collaborations, mostly in smart agriculture and energy meter reading using LP-WAN technologies, and also agriculture monitoring and water management scenarios. So these are interoperable use cases where the complete V6 stack from IPv6 to 6LoWPAN, and then the RPL, the CoAP, all this are interoperable. IEEE and IETF standards have been utilized in all these use cases. And one other initiative that we are undertaking at IIT Research Park is on the Powerline Communication Testbed Initiative under the IEEE Working Group, where we are looking at different use cases for powerline communication. So since the potential of powerline communication is not really being exploited in India, so we are interested to see, as part of the IEEE Working Group initiative, we are interested to see energy meter, including the use case that I am highlighting here on the smart building, for example, can be utilized to measure the indoor air quality or the power load that is measured at the plug, smart plug, and including occupancy detection, light sensor, temperature, and so forth. In a smart building scenario, can we utilize the power line communication to collect the data over the network and then connect to the cloud for analysis and so forth? So similarly, other use cases that we are all thinking on the already energy meter is a big use case in Tripura. There is a large-scale deployment of AMI use case in Tripura State Utility, where the power line communication is deployed for connecting 40,000, more than 40,000 customers. Energy meters are connected to the grid. DLMS meters. So they were all connected on power line communication for metering applications. So another use case that we are thinking on the street lighting and also on different scenarios where industry and academia collaborative PLC projects that we are trying to initiate under this working group. Yeah, probably. Yeah, I'll stop at that. Maybe during the Q&A, probably we can come back to the other questions. Thank you very much.
Those are all great use cases, Dr. Vindan, and I think some of the ones that you touched upon, we've been able to sort of scale them up in the production environment as well, and have customers now who are realizing the benefits both from efficiency side as well as energy saving side and so on. So thank you for bringing it up. That was
thank you very much.
Good to know. Yeah. All right, I'll actually move on to our next panelist now, Suresh. Suresh at Brewstar, which is committed to transforming businesses by harnessing the power of technology, really, right? And I understand you also use IoT in multiple ways, right, from factories, as well as for servicing high value, high capacity equipments. Can you discuss a few of IoT use cases that your organization under your leadership has successfully implemented across production as well as the supply chain logistics areas? And what were some of the initial challenges that you actually saw internally, I guess, that you faced during these implementations across these use cases? Over to you, Suresh. Suresh, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. I can't see the video though. Yeah, I can see you. Yeah.
My apologies. I guess a glitch at my end. Thank you, Lalit, for that introduction. First, let me give a couple of liners on Brewstar. Brewstar is a company which has been in India for the last 78 years plus. We are primarily in the market for providing air and water conditioning and cooling equipment. Our markets are both retail and commercial. So we got quite a range of products which fulfill a broad spectrum of applications. And that is where a lot of opportunity emerges, I guess, as well. Our IoT journey commenced some 5 years back when IoT was beginning to make its presence felt by virtue of the many conferences and many events which were around that area. So we started exploring ways and means of trying to figure out how we could apply it. Our very first use case was very obvious. We had a number of chillers, which is the commercial air conditioning equipment, which many organizations use. These are typically large deployments, and they are spread across many parts of the country. Some are in even remote sites, and servicing was becoming an issue. There was also a time delay because by the time the engineer reached that place, it would be at least 8 to 12 hours in some cases, and therefore the first response itself used to take that long. And many a times the guy had to come back and take a part after the diagnosis. So you're looking at potentially a 3-day to 4-day delay. So when we saw this problem, that's where we first started evaluating IoT as a potential solution. And post that, we went through quite a few vendors and finally implemented a particular solution, which is now connecting around 600 chillers pan-India. Most of these are critical installations where the servicing time needs to be under control at all points of that service process. Okay, and there's a critical SLA also in. We have still not broad-based it to the nearly 4,000 to 5,000 chillers which are across the country, and I'll explain some of the reasons why as well. But we are on the verge of that now. It took us 3 years to get to that stage. At least we know now what we have to do, and I'll come to that in a bit. The second case which we took up was for our factories itself. Our last factory went live on April 1 of this year. Okay, so now all my factories are on a IoT-based platform where we are collecting data in real time across all these factories and are able to compute most of the manufacturing metrics in real time, which allows the factory people to take action on a real-time basis, and therefore there is a much more higher level of utilization of those factories as a consequence. The third use case which we have tried, which we have launched actually, is within our own consumer-based air conditioning devices. We have a smart air conditioner out there, which is a split conditioner, and our initial step for IoT on that was the ability to control the device over a phone. And we realized how shitty it was the day we launched it, because it is cumbersome process to to open up the phone, to get into that app, and then switch on AC as compared to picking up the remote and just switching it on. And we realized the futility of that, so we didn't spend too much time and effort on it. Okay, but our subsequent effort, which was based on all the learnings and all the imaginations that we cultivated through the process of surveys and various other inputs, was much better. Today, I think the product which we have out there is much more intelligent. It's not just remote on the phone kind of a thing. It actually has intelligence embedded in it, where it can, for example, transmit a service request automatically. Okay, you don't need to switch it on. If it is in the power on mode, it will automatically diagnose itself and be able to even send a service request. So surprise, when the service engineer lands up at a customer's house saying that you got a problem. So we do believe that could be a potential way forward for us. So this is currently in production as well. Okay. The fourth use case was where we had a problem when most of our factories are in remote locations, and the roads coming out of those factories are normally not in very good condition. And especially during monsoons, it gets even worse. We were seeing a lot of quality issues emerging from when our products especially the chillers, reached the customer side, and we were wondering what was causing it, whether it was at source or whether it was somewhere else. We more or less concluded it was happening during the transportation, but in order to determine the true facts, we embedded certain IoT-based sensors and an edge device onto the chiller when it was being transported from point A to point B. And through that, we have been able to actually find out a number of problems, and which has resulted in us now bringing into our own reliability testing models. Okay, as a consequence of which we hope to ensure that those issues, even if the road is bad, we can overcome them. There are a number of other pilots on the table. Okay, and we do believe that some of them have potential, but those we are going a bit slow because there is a commercial angle involved with it as well. Some of the challenges. Well, before I get into the challenges, it has been an exciting 4 years. I think we have got a lot of learning, and I think somebody mentioned COVID a short while back. For us, I think COVID has become the digital disruptor truly, because thanks to our machines being connected, our factory being connected, we were actually able to get back into operations pretty quickly. We were able to do servicing remotely. We were able to continue our factory operations, albeit with a limited staff count, But because we had it all automated, we were able to keep the managers at home but continue the operations with the shop floor staff. So we were able to adhere to the government norms but keep the production up. Challenges are quite a few, but I will not get into the typical challenges related to security bandwidth, which is the usual par for the course. I'll get into some of the key learnings which we had. One key thing which we found is it is a journey. Okay, you start with a use case, but that's not the end of it. We have gone through some 6 to 7 iterations in all these use cases. Every time we do something, we do find something new coming out, which makes us go back to the drawing board. And that drawing board not only encircles the IoT piece, but it also gets into the product engineering side as well. So our R&D team gets involved because that's where we need to tweak the product itself in order to be able to get some more data which we think is necessary, especially when it comes to predictive monitoring or predictive alerts. So that is one key experience which we have been having, and we have looked back now with the R&D team as well. The second challenge which we are seeing is monetizing the benefits. Okay. I think it is a very serious topic. While the technology can produce a lot of good stuff, we still not found ways of completely monetizing it. Okay. There are quite a few challenges, especially in terms of the customer side, because most of the products which we sell have got a very tight cost base to it. It's a very competitive market as well. And most of the time, the buyers are very, very cost conscious. They don't want to add on to that cost. And some of these do add on to the cost. So it's not so easy convincing the customers. I mean, he believes that, yes, if you're doing servicing with that, it's your problem, your job to ensure that you do it, right? So how do we make that a reality is still a question on the drawing board, which we have not been able to answer very, very successfully. But I think our next version is going to get into more into predictive alerts and monitoring. That's where we think the true benefits will happen. But as you can see, that takes a little bit of time before the data gets collected and they're able to build those models in. So there is a time effect there, which we need to factor in. The third is obviously related to change management. Most of the time, people are used to doing things in a certain way. And getting these technologies integrated into the actual processes is where there is quite a few steps to be taken. You have to make it interesting for them. You have to show them exactly how it matters to them. If they don't see that happening, they will just keep it aside. It's like any other technology, but more so here because it's quite expensive as well. And fourth challenge, which I think this is more my experience for the last 4 years. So pardon me if the situation is not the same because I have not evaluated any new technology in this regard. We already have them all, right? But the challenge which I saw, especially when I went in for some of these implementations, is most of the solutions are generic. There is no industry cut, okay? And therefore, you're starting from ground zero all the time. The UI, the connectors, the sensors, the dashboards, the predictive part of it, everything has to be invented at that point in time. And that I think is unwarranted. I do believe that's where solution vendors should perhaps templatize their solutions such that it can be quickly rolled in, the benefits are seen faster rather than having to discover it. And it need not be a journey as we have experienced it. It can be a quick win for everybody. And there are many, many such more challenges, but I will wait for questions. So over to you, Lalit.
No, thanks. I think those were some great insights, and I could relate to some of it. Almost, sounded like a deja vu to me. One good thing that I could sort of correlate was the fact that most of your solutions were actually developed on field, if you will, and not in the lab, right? And you also touched upon on how do you sort of monetize that, and you're absolutely right. So whether it's a solution provider, somebody like me, or let's say Siva, or let's say an end user such as yourself, who's actually taking that product now to the market and is wanting to command a value or a premium, really, right? So I think somewhere there, the value-based pricing should actually make sense on how do you keep your product ahead of competition. And sort of deal with that whole competitive landscape, really, right? So I think the journey is great. I think, and the vertical expertise piece that you touched upon during the last part of it, really, and that's something that I could relate to it so well. Vendors do start with generic solutions, and people who actually succeed are the ones who could quickly make the vertical shift, really, right? And not try and solve, one size fits all kind of policy. Really, here it doesn't work, really. So thank you for those insights. Thank you so much, Suresh. And I'll move on to the next panelist now, and I'll go to Mr. V.S. Sri Rangarajan. Grasim has been one of the top publicly listed companies in India. That we have seen diversification happening into various sectors. Can you talk about the green track? I think that's been one of the most talked about bit really. The green track, smart manufacturing, and the smart factory initiatives. And when you do that, also if you could throw some light on how did you overcome some of the infrastructure challenges, in the areas that you were operating in, and what did you do to change the people's mindset towards the new initiatives? I think even Suresh touched upon that as well, and I think we would look forward to hear from you as well. Over to you, Mr. Srirangan.
Thank you, Lalit, and thank you, Priya, for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts. Green track is something that originated from the fact that today the world is undergoing a lot of challenges due to sustainability. I think this green track is an initiative that we started about 2 years ago. We are able to track anything that we sell backwards. So if I'm saying, Grasim, pulp and fiber business, is in the business of making fiber. And when I say I'm making fiber, fiber goes into all our textiles. We start from forest and end up being on the retail segment where we sell brands. And this whole value chain also is not really in my control. There are things which are in my control, things are not my control. And so we thought, okay, something like a blockchain will actually help me be able to trace backwards. So if you go to a pantaloon shop or any shop where you're having Liva products, there's a QR code. I can scan the QR code and I will know, okay, this particular fabric or this particular garment has come all the way from South America or Canada or, for the matter of fact, South Africa. These are things that have come from those forests and we're able to trace it back. And Suresh was talking about monetizing. Somewhere here, that monetizing also comes into effect. By saying I'm giving you sustainable fabric, what will I get? So we are kind of working on that. It's a journey. It is not something that I can say, hey, we have kind of reached that. What today I can say is that just about 3-4 days back, we have got the certification saying we are dark green shirt. Okay, dark green is about saying that's the highest ranking sustainability KPI. So if we are talking of something like this is towards sustainability. And we have kind of got a trademark for that. Now we are trying to see how we can improve that. We got about 150 partners on board, 15 brands on board. In about 2 years, we have been able to make almost $10 million go through this particular platform. So this is an initiative that we started about 2 years back. And we're kind of having multiple partners. I don't know if that's right to kind of talk about the partners now. So this is something that we tried doing. This is, I think, one of the pioneering things in the textile industry, if I can say so. That was one of the things, all about sustainability. Then, we talked about, Shiva talked about unplanned downtime, real-time monitoring, etc. Okay. Basically all about so-called operational excellence. I mean, when we are talking of operational excellence, we have tried to take a two kind of approach. One is to say, in my new plants, can I really go ahead and say I'll go for a smart factory immediately? So any new plant, that becomes easy. In my older plants, to get in new technology is not just about only mindset. Mindset itself is a big problem. Okay, change of mindset. Apart from that, the plant per se is not really equipped to kind of gel with the new stuff that we're talking of. So this two phase approach that we have taken. We had a greenfield plant coming up in Gujarat, where we have come up with a entirely connected factory, where shop floor is paperless. I'm able to have trace all the way from shipment to source. Entire product genealogy is there. My warehouse is fully automated. My logistics are all probably unmanned, if, wherever possible, and otherwise as much as automation as possible. So this is one example. And Suresh talked about how we're going to kind of get people to get buy-in. I think this smaller pilot that we did, this is about 1.5 years back. This project went live, if I'm right, beginning of 2019. So we've got put everything that is possible here that makes sense, and we've it's a proof of concept, live proof of concept. Whereas in my older plants, what we are trying to do is to kind of come up with specific pointed digital solutions where we can say here, in fact, Suresh again talked about that also. He talked about chiller. So we want to see my chillers. Can I have digital twins for my chiller to improve the whole thing? We're talking about giving visibility everywhere. When we're talking of visibility, I have Aspen Tech that I run everywhere in all my plants in my, China, Indonesia, Thailand, India, Canada. So we have a common enterprise-wide platform where I'm able to get this data and give some kind of predictive analytics. I'm able to improve quality by this. Why am I able to improve quality? I mean, if I were to go to a lab and get the results and then take corrective action, it takes me anywhere between 4 to 8 hours. Whereas by giving this kind of predictive, data, I am able to come to the user and say, hey guys, something is wrong. And this will be in 15 minutes. So we are addressing challenges on the shop floor in a matter of 15, 20 minutes. And yeah, of course, the next step would be to say, okay, can this also be automated? And I can say, I'll have APC where people don't have to change the parameters. That's the next level that we'll probably think of. I think first is to get this at least, people used to going data-based rather than experience-based. So these are some of the things that we are talking of. In terms of challenges or learnings that we have had, I think a couple of things that we started about 3-4 years back is to say, we will have some kind of a decentralized connectivity structure where units directly connect to the cloud while we take care of all the security, etc. We have adopted something like a cloud first strategy where I have everything on cloud. Why? Remote factories, spread out factories. We are having across 7-8 countries now. I want to connect them. I want to see comparison. Comparison helps not only in understanding, but also in a way helps the guys to say that if China can do better than me, how can I improve? So this is also a peer pressure. So we want to kind of get that kind of understanding of inter-factory comparison, and it's a single instance everywhere. And 2, we are also talking of, communication. I think everywhere we need communication. We want buy-in everywhere. So we have kind of thought of regular awareness training for everybody, all the way from the factory manager to down to the operator. We're talking of quick wins. I mean, like the example that I gave of smart factory at Gujarat plant. So everywhere have a small pilot, and this pilot would actually give confidence to the other guy. So we kind of replicate that everywhere. So this is how we have gone about trying to get a, should I say, a B2B legacy company kind of switch gears. I think that I thought I'll share this point. And if you have questions, I can always take questions.
Yeah, we'll come to that in a while. So thank you so much, Mr. Sri Rangarajan. I think the green track bit was very impressive. And just the fact that you could look at the fabric in a retail store and trace the origin all the way back to South America is something which is very impressive to me personally, and all other initiatives that you're doing, especially in the new factories, if you will, which is now set up at Gujarat, where you are trying and testing out many things which can then be replicated to some of the legacy plants and all that. You can count upon on some of the solution providers such as ourselves to make sure that you remain ahead of China. there's a personal bit of achievement for all of us there, actually. So we can all rally behind you.
Coincidentally, Tata Communications is my partner for my connectivity bit. I think all the SD-WAN, etc. I must say it has been working very well. Absolutely. Yes. I don't think of infrastructure and all that stuff.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for saying that. And with that, I'll actually move on to our specialist, on the regulatory side. Sumit, So Unlimit is the only kind of dedicated IoT business unit in India, providing an unparalleled end-to-end IoT offerings, and I think you have very impressive credentials on dealing with regulatory aspects. So can you take a few minutes to talk about some of the regulatory challenges that solution providers face while deploying some of the IoT services? And do you see any sort of lack of coordinated efforts between various ministries, authorities, or and so on? So please feel free to talk about all the use cases that you heard, and what do you see from the regulatory point? Over to you, Sumit.
Sure. Thanks, Lalit. So I heard a lot of use cases, so maybe I'll touch upon what Unlimit is doing a bit for just about 2 minutes before I actually get on to discuss the use cases that have been discussed just now. So Unlimit, like you said, is an end-to-end solution provider. We work with a large ecosystem. So we are not a specific domain IoT service provider, but any kind of solution, right from talking to your car, where you can say hello to your car and it responds to your commands, is what the kind of solution Unlimit has provided. To that extent, those solutions, even the connected wheelchair people, are asking to be adapted. So one of the things what Suresh was mentioning was in terms of the genericity of application. So if you look at the build of an IoT service, actually it's in 3 layers: the network, the common services, and the application on top. So the genericity is already built into it, because the same solution where I'm sensing a particular instance and providing a different output can be adapted for another application. Just the application needs to be altered. Next, I heard a lot about monetization of these aspects. So just to give you an example, so Unlimit basically provides the connected car solutions. In that, capturing of driver behavior itself becomes a major data point that is available, which can be further exploited. So that exploitation is in terms of the insurance companies wanting to provide customized insurance to each individual. So if a person is driving a car on the highways, vis-a-vis a person driving in the cities, or if someone is a rash driver who's driving on the wrong side, trying to jump the red lights and all, why should 2 people who's a safe driver versus a person who's a rash or a driving outside the cities on highways, why should they pay the same premium? So that kind of an analytical product, when it comes to, let's say, the connected car solution, is what starts the monetization aspect of IoT. So next, I would like to touch upon the Industry 4.0 solutions that most of you have touched upon. Now, the Industry 4.0 solutions, if you look at it, IoT has the ability of actually moving beyond automation and the predictive maintenance portion that we all have been talking about. You see, the greatest strength of IoT is in terms of creating the data sets. So if I have an industry, let's say a manufacturing industry, which has input of raw material and production, followed by the delivery of the system of my produce to the market. What if I have individual IoT solutions for each and every aspect? So I have a transport and logistics for raw material as well as delivery of my products. I have an Industry 4.0 solution for my industry. Now, supposing all these 3 start talking to each other, wherein my production mechanism has the ability of understanding how much raw material do I have. My transport system knows how much of transport is available for me to transport my goods to the market. How much of raw material do I require? So it's a seesaw where the entire system would get in a chain and the monetization starts happening there. So that starts bringing in the more amalgamation of services, more synergy within the entire business chain. Now, all these, if you look at, there is a major requirement of security in each and every aspect. We are generating humongous amount of data, so we need to look at the data security. But apart from that, if we just take a step back, let's say the transport and logistics scenario. If I'm transporting household goods, vis-a-vis I'm transporting military goods or let's say the nuclear material, my security requirement of the entire logistic chain becomes that much different. So this is where I would like to start, that the first step where the government is working on is the security requirements of the IoT services. Especially what is happening is that presently very vanilla IoT solutions are being provided. People just want, let's say, transport and logistics. A very, very vanilla device is being put in the in your transport fleet. Whereas what is required is that you need to take care that this device is not overwhelmed and it starts jeopardizing the entire network. If I put a device which has very, very basic, let's say, Android operating system into it, vis-a-vis an Android which is hardened, which is protected, it will make a lot of difference. So this is one area where a lot of requirements for the regulatory intervention are already coming in. Towards the data side, of course, the government is working towards the privacy and protection bill, the data protection bill, which has already been introduced in the parliament and the committee is discussing it. We've had a non-personal data bill, non-personal data report, which was produced by MIT through a select team, which was under discussion, and all comments have been submitted for that. So that, of course, will come in. Now, if we start going a bit beyond, like you've all been working on the Industry 4.0 solutions, LoRa vans and the LP vans are definitely one of the solutions. But beyond this, industries which are looking at actually doing away with their entire wiring to make their shop floor flexible. So that is where major regulatory changes are required, where the government is already onto a lot of consultation with the industry and working towards, let's say, providing the 5G spectrum to these industries, because it's a question of ROI. A telco will not have an ROI in a remote mine or a remote factory in one of the SEZs because he doesn't find those numbers. But that industry, that mine, for monitoring its plant, that industry on its shop floor has that ROI. So it would be ready to invest in a private LTE or a private 5G kind of a network, because he needs that bandwidth, he needs those dedicated resources, and he needs that security. One of the major aspects of IoT services which requires regulatory intervention is trust. Trust on the machine, that it is that same machine, it is that same device which is supposed to give me the inputs, and the inputs that it is supposed to give me are the ones that I'm receiving. So it is that trust factor which comes into play, wherein I should have an absolute trust on the entire system that my system is working fine. Let's say a small example, if we take a home connected refrigerator. Now, if a refrigerator starts providing or starts ordering groceries or milk to an extent where the requirement is not there, or it is giving me inputs that I must continue getting the groceries home, those are places where the trust factor starts coming in. We really need to build onto these aspects. So towards this end, there are a lot of discussions going on towards building a national trust center, which will provide the trust for each and every component of the ecosystem of IoT services, so to say. And last but not the least, which I would like to just suggest is, see, the IoT solutions are multifunctional. So it is smart cities is with the urban ministry, smart agriculture is with the agriculture ministry, e-health, the policy about to come, MORTH, the Ministry of Roads and Highways, they have come out with their own standard for safe public transport in terms of AIS 140. Now, there is a lot of coordination which is required within these ministries, because communication is the domain of DOT. lot of data protection would be with the DPA, maybe under MIT or a separate authority. Then each ministry having its own standards, like I said, AIS 140 for transport. So this coordination is something which is required, and the realization has already occurred. I'll not say that it does not. The realization has occurred. Even TIA in its recommendation had recommended a multi-functional body to actually look at all these aspects so that everyone knows that if I'm building up a standard, the other support is required immediately. It should not happen that they start talking in different time zones. Because if one standard comes in and the other supporting standard or supporting regulatory support is not available, then the solution availability becomes that much difficult. With that, I'd like to submit back to you, Lalit, and any questions I'll be happy to answer.
Yeah, no, I think you touched upon some very important aspects, Sumit, and your understanding of what makes sense for a telco, and I think I could relate to that very well, because we realized going after city is probably not adequate for us to realize returns on our investments. We need to actually go after where our network will actually make more sense, and where some of those factories and manufacturing units will be able to sort of realize their own ROI, and would also pay for what is due for us, really, right, in terms of the network and platform and devices and application, all of the IoT aspects really put together. So and it's good to know the fact that all of these ministries are sort of now looking at a horizontal sort of layer to connect and come up with with recommendations and recommend and make it sort of easier for some of the solution providers and manufacturing units and industries to sort of talk to. So with that, I think we are just slightly over the hour now. And what I would do is, I think we still have about 10 more minutes, Kavita, if we can. Maybe we could actually just open it up for Q&A now. And I see there are some 55 attendees who are there. I think the format is going to be that they can type in questions here, and then we could try and take as many questions as we. Yeah, Kavita, over to you.
Lalit, I think if any panelists have any questions for each other, then they can continue, because this is happening on various platforms. So let us just see if there are any questions on those as well.
Okay. So panelists, do you have any questions for each other? No? Okay. If not, maybe I can actually ask a question.
Yeah, Lalit, sorry, I was talking on mute. This is Shiva here.
Yes,
I was about to ask Ganesh. He has very valuable insights from the implementations that they did at Blue Star. So one of the interesting aspects, probably not just me, but the audience who are considering IoT implementations in their organizations, are digital transformation initiatives in their organizations. Would be keen to know. So when we are saying that the value is under question or need to be still justified, I wanted to understand. So on what assumptions or on what initial analysis are these use cases are implemented, Suresh, so that we'll understand much into the why the outcomes are not realized. So is there some analysis of I mean, as you also said, it's not just purely because technology can do anything, we shouldn't really go about implementing it. So some sort of is there any initial pre exercises which you must have done, and I would like to understand if that is translated at the end of implementation, or there challenges while the translation of initial thoughts to final outcome.
Yeah, sure. I guess the question was for me, right?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, Suresh.
So you're right. See, we did do an initial benefits analysis to understand where the technology could be coming of use to us. Okay, so there are both soft benefits in terms of service improvement or in terms of service efficiency, especially in the case of the chillers, which is the remote monitoring of chillers, that initiative. Okay, In the case of factories, obviously it is with the usual obvious things such as OE, improvement of OE, in terms of improvement of energy consumption or trying to identify energy wastages. That was the basis of our initial premise. Okay, let's take that factory under consideration. When we started off on this, we knew we had 5 factories to cover. We knew they had a very manual method of computing OE. We knew that a lot of paperwork was in progress, and therefore there was a lot of manpower also involved. There was nothing happening in real time. Everything used to happen at the end of the day. So nobody knew at any point in time what was happening. And if anybody had to find out anything in a factory, they had to call the factory. So if the manufacturing head of all those 5 factories wanted a centralized view, it was missing completely. So there were many of these. This is what I call best soft benefits. Okay. The extended benefits are related to your predictive maintenance, for example. How much downtime can I avoid? Okay. The second area which we uncovered some of these things subsequently as well, which is what I'm going to. There are a number of initiatives which we were able to spawn off after we got the data collected right. That took us a while because, for a simple example, the shop floor operator, we have equipped them with HCI machines, okay, for them to input some reasons or what was the reason for a stoppage at any point in the production cycle during the day. Our initial gathering of data left it very vague. And we also found that there was a generic tendency to give a very, very, feeble or soft answer. Ki sab parts nahi the, okay, or something of that sort, which was not leading us to any conclusion in terms of what was going on. So, and again, as I said, we had the challenge of people embracing it easily at the start as well, right? So we fixed both. By virtue of those, we were able to spawn off a number of initiatives which actually resulted in further efficiencies, and this we are able to translate to a cost. Now, I'll give you another example as to what I mean by this. OE is a metric.
Yep.
And there is no standard way of converting it to a cost. Okay. Converting it to a monetary value. We are seeing percentage increases in OE, thanks to whatever we are doing. But converting it to a monetary value is where we are seeing some struggles in terms of, okay, what does a 1 percentage point increase in a OE in a particular factory? Because the factory does a lot of things. It does a lot of other products as well. It's not like it's just one seamless operation. So arriving at that monetary figure was a challenge. In the case of the remote monitoring, we were able to see savings in terms of travel costs because we don't need to send an engineer every time. He can actually start troubleshooting first before he actually sees whether he has to go to a site or not. So we are seeing a truncation of that cost. But a true monetary benefit will be when we are able to sell it along with the service, along with the AMC, right, to the customer, where we are able to get a return on that investment which has been put in. So it is not cheap as well, right? You've got a device which is sitting there. If it's got more than a number of chillers, you have multiple devices sitting there. You've got a bandwidth cost. You've got a centralized setup here. We have actually set up a complete monitoring unit in our Thane facility, which tracks all these chillers. So there is a substantial investment which has been put in. Now, the only way to gain ROI on that level of investment is not by reduction of travel cost. It has to be on the basis of selling that as a service to the customer. We are seeing only certain customers who have stringent SLAs, let's say a pathology lab or a scanning lab, okay, where they need to have the chillers operational all times. And therefore, for us to be able to ensure that we meet those SLAs, this is the first level of intervention which they may be able to convert that SLA into a finance or a monetary aspect for us. But in other sectors, they see it as a part of the service delivery operation itself. They consider it to be as a given rather than as a offtake. So I'll give you one more example. I won't get into the actual product, but in one of our products, we had a request to be able to trace those products. Okay, and these are sold in bulk. They are picked up OEMs and then they are further distributed downstream to their retail shops. So they wanted to be able to track those products and make sure that they are also used for the reasons why that OEM has given it to that retailer. Now that is where we have a solution. We can do everything. We can even see what products are stored inside that particular device. We can find out what are the temperature fluctuations. We can find out what is happening with that device at all points in time. We know where it is, but there's a cost associated with it. And what we are finding is because of the tight cost aspect from the OEM side, he doesn't want it to be jacked up by a substantial amount. The cost of this solution, we were able to bring it down to some 2,500 rupees, okay, for a 4-year window. We even went down to that extent. we were able to optimize it, but no takers. Although it solves a problem, he is not able to now convert it into a monetary benefit where he can justify an additional 2,500 rupee increase in his product. And he buys it in thousands. So there is a big effect on his overall cost. It's also a question of convincing. Okay, how do you find enough elements to convince somebody? We are not able to come up with very valid, justifiable answers which they can take to their management as well. It's still a little bordering on the vagueness to a certain extent.
Yeah, I understand. I think this is not uncommon. This is what the consultants call the pilot purgatory, where probably a structured thinking or structured analysis of the value versus the implementation of any transformation technologies is quite natural. I'm sure you folks must be doing that. We normally advise an ideation and identify all the use cases and pick up the most valued use cases with respect to the technology feasibility, implementation versus the outcome, which will actually catalyze the rest of the transformation. Then
that is the normal way to do it, right? For any tech, but look at it slightly differently. Okay, you're looking at a manufacturing organization where people are used to doing certain things in a very certain fixed way. To invoke that imagination in them, to be able to seize things in a certain way, which allows them to get different kinds of benefits, is perhaps which is why I spoke about templatized solutions, right? If you're able to get templatized, then you are able to get them to that end result faster. But otherwise, it's a very slow process because you're taking one step at a time rather than getting everything on, because that process of imagining itself takes time.
Yeah. I totally agree. I'm saying, it's not uncommon. Our research findings also suggest that the journey is that challenging and complex, and it needs to be led and driven in the right direction so that we all see the benefit of the technology to the organizations which are investing in that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Lalit, back to you.
No, I think just to sort of extend it, and if we have another maybe couple of minutes more, I know we are sort of 3 minutes over. But one of the challenges, and similar one that Suresh has been talking about, we were doing a safety implementation for a very large set of workers, as I said, and here you're dealing with workers who are almost illiterate, and for them to adopt to a device and use it, simple device where they have to actually press a button to keep themselves safe and call upon a rescue process, and to tell them that, hey, these are the areas that you're not supposed to go and these are the areas you're supposed to go and this device will guide you. Just this simple process, really, right? How hard could it actually be? Now, what the challenge was? The first challenge is that, hey, we are now going to be tracked and policed. How do you deal with that, right? Now, so that was one of our biggest challenge, by the way. How did we solve it? I mean, we didn't know how to solve this, really, right? We actually partnered with the lowest, I would say the lowest guy in the food chain, which is the user himself. Partner with them, take 5 or 6 guys aside and tell them what the benefit is. And, and then take the union into account and work with the union leaders, and then just slowly work on the mindset to say that, hey, this is not to police you or track you or trace you. This is actually to save you, right? From there to get them to say that, Saab, ye jo aapne diya hai na, ye to mitra hai hamara, right? From there to get them to speak, this was a huge journey, really, right? And so many learnings there, really. So it's not just about technology, how good technology that you've designed, really. Whether it's going to be adopted and used, and are you going to realize the outcomes is always
true.
Yeah.
True.
So over to other analyst if there is any question. Otherwise, we could look at.
So, Lalit, just to add to what Suresh was actually mentioning. So, Unlimited was also providing a solution where a company actually wanted a very old company. They said that our assembly line starts faltering when our boiler goes down. So, when Unlimited started implementing the solution was being implemented over multiple areas of the assembly line. So, the obvious question was, no, the area to be resolved is the boiler. Don't touch the other aspects. However, it's only when the data starts coming in, when you start analyzing, the actual problem came out to be somewhere else. You're right, convincing somebody in IoT is actually in terms of not thinking only in the direction where it is being pointed to, but you got to have data points being available at multiple areas to actually arrive at, because it is the analytics which is actually now making the difference.
Absolutely. I fully agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lalita, I see a question on the Q&A panel about sensorization of the end devices, and would like to understand the availability and maturity of such sensors. So if I just have to quickly reflect on that, I think there are two ways of two kinds of equipment or devices that we see on the shop floor. Most of the modern new age equipment is already intelligent equipment. The way Suresh was mentioning, some of the Blue Star equipment, they report their own health periodically to the edge devices or to the control center, and that is already been tracked. And if we are talking about the legacy dark assets which are on the floor, there are mechanisms of instrumentation that can be done on those devices with the relevant sensors which are required to measure the specific KPIs, the way you, Vishal, you asked on the question. And I think a couple of instances, if I can talk about, we do the vibration analysis of the rotating equipment with the equipment which is like a legacy motors which are rotating, which have rotating equipment. The vibration of that equipment, or the instrumentation of that equipment can be done by measuring vibration in multiple dimensions, and that can be analyzed to understand that how that vibration is actually going to impact the equipment, and a predictive failure of the equipment can be predicted in that process. So specific to the use cases, there can be sensors which are available, and I mean, I request other panelists if they have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, you're right, Shiva. There are a lot of sensors available. The question is, of course, trying to find the right sensor to fit your specific requirement. There could be some trial and error there as well. In many cases, we have to work around the problem. One of the biggest challenges which we had is we have old legacy machines sitting in our factories. Okay, they may not even have enough PLC. So we still need the data though. So the way to get around it was by embedding external sensors to whatever counts we needed and trying to get some of that. But we also had a lot of misses because there were certain flow sensors which started misbehaving for us, and they are expensive. And it took us at least 3 iterations before we were able to narrow down on, and that was a critical part for us because the data which it was sending to us was a vital part of the overall process. We had to deal with multiple escalations because it used to fail every now and then, and we finally got it right. But that's again going back. See, there should be some standards defined for a specific need. If that happens, then the adoption becomes much more faster. And more importantly, what is happening is the user experience, right? At the end of the day, the users have to be confident that whatever data is being produced is reliable and is of the best quality. But if they start seeing glitches like this, that's where we start losing them. So that is one big thing. So we stopped, getting into low-cost devices. We started trying to get the best for all those areas.
Interesting.
Different sense, actually. There are a couple of questions actually that I just saw on the WhatsApp group as well. I think I'll take one of them. The question is, given the numerous possibilities which IoT can inspire, how MSMEs can start their adoption journey, if any pre-preparations and minimum requirements, etc., that need to be done. So, Siva, do you want to take this one? I can maybe add a few lines if there is a need, but I'll ask you to just take this one maybe.
Yeah. As I said, some of these experiences that we just heard from Suresh from Blue Star and Grasim, the way they implemented the plant, connected plant or predictable plant, I think the first step to any of this digital transformation is to understand the organizational objectives. As I said, on one of the dimensions that we can analyze is the efficiency drivers and growth drivers, and what kind of organizational objectives can be met with each of these dimensions, be it the bringing the efficiency under the shop floor, which is operational excellence related parameters, or be expanding the ecosystem from being a product-oriented organization to product-led services organization, and going beyond it in a B2B to X kind of a mode to enable your customers to drive the consumption of your product is another approach to things. So a structured thinking with different personas of the organizations coming together to identify the strategic objectives, translate that into what kind of product or efficiency growth drivers that you wanted to drive, and map it to the technology of the day which is available, or technologies which are emerging, which can leverage, which you can leverage to translate those objectives, is a basic step in this journey. And a simple two-by-two matrix of feasibility versus the business value, and then select those items which are feasible and generating the maximum value, and pick those up, implement those, and that itself catalyst like it works, and then propels the rest of the organizational transformation, business transformation, which can be achieved using this technology. So this is one way of doing it, and specific to the organizations and specific to the industry domains, we can explore, or we can have a direct the way Suresh was suggesting. Instead of going with the generic concepts, we can have a specific customized view for the specific business challenge and drive a organizational transformation.
Yeah. No, and you're absolutely right. And I would just add that, if you have the right partner, and this question was especially for MSMEs who are on a faster growth charter, really, right? For you guys, speed is the key as well. So the way I would put it is that, if you have all of those, components or the building blocks, if you will, that Siva just called out, right? The key is for you to faster adopt it and not let the priority change or die as you sort of implement it, really. What I've seen personally is a lot of organizations actually would want to do new things, digital initiatives and all of that, but their budget, quarter on quarter sort of is either cut to, or just it kind of remains like a science project, really, right? It never sees the light of a day, really. And that's where I think the key is to sort of make faster decisions and implement that on a scale for you to realize the outcomes and business benefits.
Organizations need to understand that the solution has to be a by design kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So the initial portion itself, you cannot have that, okay, let me work on something and then I start scaling it up. IoT will actually start working once you start thinking in terms of designing from the scratch itself.
Got it. Over to you, Kavita. I think we are over time now. Yeah.
Thank you so much to all the panelists. It was a very wonderful discussion, and how it connects to our other session in the evening or the afternoon is connected to automobile segment. I would request all of you to join there, because there's a lot of related elements here from IoT and that session. So now we'd like to begin the next session. It is on the evolving cybersecurity landscape, and the session chairman is Colonel Suhail Zaidi. I would request you to kindly take on. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Kavita. Thanks, everyone else. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.